Live streaming is one of the best ways to build a community and to really create kind of a relationship around a brand because your audience gets to be so involved in everything you're creating. In this video, we're going to talk a lot about the basics of live streaming and how you can actually go about getting started with live streaming. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome. My name is Nick Balkowski and I'm one of the virtual event production managers at CUNA. So my day-to-day job at CUNA is a lot of live streaming and different things like that, or a lot of components of live streaming. I've also been doing live streams for other businesses as a freelancer since 2011 was the first event I've live streamed. And I really enjoy helping businesses and communities and just organizations get started with live streaming because, again, I think it's one of the best ways to create a really great relationship with an audience, to really take them along on the journey and let them be a part of the experience of creating content and feel like they're a part of your brand, really, because they're there interacting with you. They're there asking their questions directly or adding in their comments directly, and those comments are becoming part of the show or part of the video that you're creating. So in this video, I want to give you some basics of what to consider, what to think about when getting started with live stream, and hopefully I'll convince a few of you to jump on in and get started with some live streaming and just help improve some of those along the way for those of you that are already doing some live streaming. So actually that is a great thing right now. I would love to know, have you ever gone live before? Let me know in the comments, leave a comment. I'll be jumping back in and checking these out. But I'd love to know if you've gone live before. Just give me a yes or no in the comments. Looking forward to seeing where the experience is with this group. First of all, like I mentioned, it is a great way to really create that engagement and that buy-in from your audience because they get to be right there with you when you're creating the content and potentially influencing. If you're setting things up in a good way, they could influence the way the content is going, the way the content is being created, and they can really play that active part in the creation of your videos and the creation of the content that you're putting out. Another big advantage with live streaming, in my opinion, if integrated correctly into your content strategy, is that it can make creating pieces of content, multiple pieces of content, significantly easier and faster in the long run. So I actually have another video where I talk about podcasting and how you could actually incorporate live streaming into part of your podcasting strategy. And so that goes a little bit deeper into some of the ways you can kind of repurpose the content, but from a live stream, you could easily clip out different clips. You could turn it again into a podcast. You could turn it into an audio podcast. You can have smaller, different sections of videos. You can pull quotes from it. It just can be a great foundational element for creating content. So when getting started with a live stream, what should you focus on? First, one of the main things I think you need to think about is which platform you're going to be going live on. Now, you have tons of different options. You have things like Instagram, you have things like Twitch, LinkedIn Live, Facebook, YouTube. All of them have different strengths. All of them have different advantages and disadvantages. Ultimately, I think you need to make that decision along of how it incorporates into your overall content strategy. How are you going to be using this content? Do most of your audience engage on LinkedIn? Is that where everybody is? Well, then you might want to consider going live directly to LinkedIn because that's where your audience is. Or are they very involved in Instagram? Then you're going to approach things slightly differently just because of the way Instagram approaches live stream. Things are going to look slightly different. I think ultimately you need to think about what makes sense with your overall content strategy, and then from there kind of narrow it down to a few platforms and then jump to whichever one makes the most sense. From a personal preference, I like to lean towards YouTube because I think it gives you a better experience, gives your viewers a better experience, gives you a better experience. The videos will tend to last longer, have a longer runtime, and kind of a longer tail end, if you will, where they're still relevant, where they're still going to get views versus like a Facebook or an Instagram, where that is great for engagement, but then the viewability afterwards is almost zero. So that's where I think you need to really keep that in mind and make that part of your decision. when deciding which platform to go for. And then from there, I think you kind of commit to one and build in that consistency. That's going to be the big thing. The more consistency you can have with going live, the better. One of the best strategies you could have would be to go live every single week at the exact same time and to really create a show around your live stream. Now, I know for a lot of people that might be a little bit too much of a commitment depending on other things going on, but the more you could get closer to something, a model like that, the more consistency you're going to build, the more your audience is going to expect your show to happen at that time and then start showing up there. That's how you're going to really get a lot of those live viewers, is by building in that repetition, building in that consistency, just like you'd sit down at 9 p.m. to watch Game of Thrones or to watch Succession or whatever it might be. You build in that consistency so people show up for that show at that time. Let's talk about some of the basics of live streaming and some of the things that you need. One of the very first ones is you're going to need some sort of internet signal or cell phone signal in order to stream. Generally, the faster the speed, the better. And what we're really focused on when streaming is your upload speed. Most everywhere, what you're going to hear from is like download speeds. So you need to specifically ask or specifically run a speed test in order to figure out what your upload speed is. 5 megabytes per second is probably your minimum baseline. It needs to be faster than that. Otherwise, you're just going to have a rough time and have some challenges trying to stream. Still technically possible, but it just might be a little not as high quality of an experience as you'd like to have. From there, you can absolutely get started streaming on your phone. In fact, that's what I would recommend if that's what you have. Get started. Side note, I'm a huge believer in improving as you go. A huge believer in what's called the 1% rule, where each time you're tackling something like live streaming, you just get started with where you're at and look to improve 1% every single time, and then do that consistently. Again, building in that consistent habit of going live is going to really drastically improve your going live, your live production, versus trying to figure everything out before you ever press that go live button. So maybe the first time you're just getting used to going live, and then the next time maybe you're working on your framing of your camera and framing of your position in the screen. Then maybe you start looking at lighting and slowly trying to tackle and master different things, improve your quality a little bit every single time. But let's jump back to going live with your phone. Absolutely can do that. Almost all the platforms are going to allow you to be able to do that directly from your phone, which it is a great way to get started. There are a few things that we're going to talk about here in a second that you can do to improve the look and feel of that live stream, even from your phone. But again, ultimately, I want you to get started with where you're at. Once you're looking to graduate from your phone, then you're going to want to consider some of the streaming softwares that are available and what's out there. Several different programs. I have a few that I recommend. Really quickly, if you are an Apple person, if you're someone using a Mac, I highly recommend Ecamm. It's one of my favorites for the Mac platform. If you're running a PC, I recommend vMix. I just find that's a better user experience than a lot of the other ones out there. That's actually what we are using to run the hybrid element of Digital Marketing School. That's what we use for all of our events, is vMix. If you need to go to, because of your computer's ability, if you need to go to a browser solution, I don't love those as much. I prefer to have an actual software application on your computer versus just simply running through an internet browser. But one to look at is StreamYard. That's probably one of the more popular ones. It is a good program. It is a good platform. I just find you end up having more bugs and more issues when you're running it from a browser because of the way it works. You need a little bit better internet. You need a few other things. Whereas when you're going directly from your computer and allowing the software to do most of the processing, you get a little bit better experience, in my opinion. The other option is to actually go live directly in the native experience for whatever platform you choose. So Facebook, you can go live directly through Facebook. Same with YouTube, same with all of them. They have some sort of way to go live directly in that platform. Something to consider. Usually you're not going to have as many extra production features, but again, great way to get started, great way to get some of that experience. And then once your ability or your desire to increase the production quality outgrows that native platform, then maybe that's time to look at some of these softwares. The next thing you're going to want to consider is your audio. Audio is always going to be one of the most important things with your stream or with any video for that matter. Your actual video quality doesn't matter nearly as much as your audio quality does. So you want to make sure that you're sounding as best as you possibly can. And so buying some sort of extra mic, it would be my first recommended upgrade, is to actually figure out how can I improve the sound quality of my stream. Is what steps can I do? Can I get an XLR mic? Can I get a USB mic? Can I use my Apple AirPods as that microphone, or some way to improve the quality of your mic? Generally, the built-in mics on laptops or things like that are not great. So you're going to want to try and find some other way to get audio into your computer and into your stream. And from there, we can talk about cameras and video. And I put this intentionally in this spot behind audio because it is less important. I'd rather you invest any sort of resources you have into your audio first before investing into improving your video quality. But from there, jumping away from your laptop's, say, built-in camera, is probably a good idea. Likely the webcam on your laptop is not very great. So there's that natural upgrade where you can jump to some sort of external webcam. Those are going to be a little bit better. Or you can, if you are able to, making the leap to an actual camera. Many of the cameras nowadays, the Sonys, the Canons, they have built-in integrations with that allow you to take a USB-C cable, plug it directly into your computer, and run it as a webcam. There are also things like capture cards and other stuff like that we could go way more detail into, but I don't have time to in this video. If you want a little bit more specifics about live streaming gear, head on over to nickbolkowski.com/gear guide. I have a lot of recommendations there of things I've used, recommend to people, and different gear to consider in your live streaming studio. But before we move on, I want to jump back into just talking a little bit more about the overall video aspect. One thing that a lot of people miss on is just the way they frame up their video. And you've probably seen this several different times. Maybe you are some of the people who've made this mistake in the past. I know I'm guilty of it sometimes, but not thinking about your framing within the video. So you may have the video where it's the up the nose shot, or you're only seeing the top half of their head, or they're sitting way back away from the camera, or something like that. Framing in your video is going to make you look more professional. It's going to help your audience connect better. So you really want to think about how you're setting up that frame. So that's why I probably recommend, even if you just have a laptop, one thing you can do if you're using the laptop webcam is to place that laptop on some books. Find something to build it up so that laptop is at about eye level, that camera is at about eye level with you. That's where your camera should kind of be focused on, is directly level with your eyes. And then kind of consider framing like this, where my head is fairly close to the top. I probably could even be dropped down a little bit in this frame and it'd still be all right. So I fill up the majority of the frame. I'm not, small. I'm not taking up the entire frame, but this is kind of about the framing and the clear space that I would recommend if you're just getting started to start thinking about. It's going to drastically improve your production quality and the way things look. So along those lines, really consider investing in a tripod. So if you have an external webcam, you can put that on some sort of tabletop tripod, or get a little friction arm that will allow you to adjust it and have it kind of focused at that eye level so that you can look directly into the lens. And that's one other extra little piece to consider. Remember, your audience is right there in that camera. And so you want to be making eye contact with your audience. It's looking directly at the camera, not looking down at your screen in front of you. You don't want to be talking to them like this, because that just feels weird. It's just an awkward thing. You want to be able to talk to them directly by looking directly through that lens. It takes a little bit of practice, but it's definitely something I think all of you can get used to. Again, that's why I recommend going live consistently and just going and getting used to some of these habits. You can start practicing it with any of your Zoom meetings or Teams calls. It's the same kind of element. The camera, the audience members, the other people on the other side of the computer, they are looking at you through that lens. That's how you can connect with them. That's their eyes, if you will. So if you want to make eye contact with the people you're talking to, look down the barrel of the lens. The next kind of element to consider is your lighting. Now, in here we have some decent lighting, but you want to find a way to really light yourself up well. You want to be lit well so that your camera doesn't have to try to do all the work, camera or software, because they're always going to fall down. Even the most amazing cameras, the highest end cinema cameras that they shoot the Marvel films on and all the other kind of stuff, those in bad lighting situations will look terrible. And even just a basic iPhone, or even honestly, your little computer's webcam, if you light things right, they can look pretty good. Now, I'm not going to say your computer's webcam is going to look amazing, but you can drastically increase the quality just by thinking about lighting. This is a whole huge topic that people spend their entire careers focusing on. So we're not going to be able to cover everything in this video, but just for some starters, if you are using natural light, find a window and just look directly at that window. So you should be facing the window so the light kind of is washing over the front of your face. You want to generally avoid having a strong backlit environment. So you don't want to have the major light source behind you, because that's going to wash you out and people aren't going to be able to see you in your video. If you have any sort of external lights, so if you're able to do, I don't necessarily recommend ring lights, but I know a lot of people have them. Even putting that in front of your camera, like it's kind of like it's meant to use, provides a great even light. It really works well. In here, what I have right now is just one single light source. I have a softbox over about 45-degree angle from the camera and about 45 degrees up. That's where that light is. It's just kind of shining down on me. And then you notice I do have some extra lights in the background. That's how this entire place is lit right now. Adding in extra little elements like backlighting and stuff like that is a cool little effect. Can again increase the production quality, but don't focus so much on that. Focus on finding that, that one nice soft light source. If you're looking for a brand, highly recommend Aputure. They vary in prices, vary in size, but even some of their really small lights I love using, and they can be great even as a desktop light. So if you have a little stand for it, a lot of them have magnets in them, so you could just have something that you could attach it to. If you have some metal that you can attach it to, you can use your light source there. Actually, all of the background lights are all little Aputure lights that I love using as that accent light, but they could very well be used as your key light or your main light source. And then once you start to nail some of these elements down, I think that's when you can look to add in some of those other production elements, some of those other ways to improve your production quality. Things like lower thirds, things like little graphics, some music, sound effects, bringing in videos, those different elements. I think that this is the time where you can start to look to incorporate those in your live streams even more once you get some of those basic things nailed down, or at least closer to being nailed down. And that was a very fast overview of some of the basics of live streaming and kind of the gear and equipment and stuff like that. I do want to know what questions you have. Again, I'm going to be following up on this video here throughout the next few weeks. So leave them in the comments on the side here. Let me know what questions about gear, what questions about just framing and stuff like that. What questions around the basics do you have that you'd like to learn a little bit more about? I'll definitely be jumping in the comments and answering some of those as well. The next big element when you're getting started with live streaming is that you need to design for engagement. Engagement is one of the big advantages of live streaming. However, it does need to be pulled off in the right way. It needs to be thought about in the correct way to get the most out of that power that live streaming has. it's going to be important that you think about the content that you want to create with your live stream. So what kind of, and you need to provide great content during that stream. So it's important that you have a topic that you want to cover in your stream, and then kind of build engagement elements around that topic. Because especially when you're starting out, you're likely not going to have many people showing up for your live stream. They're not going to be there in person, especially not until you start to develop more of a consistent habit or grow your audience kind of in general. Then you'll get more people tuning in and participating live. So that's why it's important that you have some sort of topic and content you want to cover, and actually go ahead and create an outline like you would if you're presenting on stage. If you were giving that as a keynote presentation or as a workshop presentation in front of a group of people, because that's essentially what you're doing here, except in the virtual world, and where they're going to be able to interact through chat versus interacting by raising their hand or having table conversations or things like that. However, remember that the extra value of live streaming is that interaction piece. It's that the audience gets to be a part of the creation process of this piece of content. So be sure to build that in right from the start. Think about ways that you can get your audience involved as quickly as possible. And that could be adding little elements, little questions, and little reactions. So have people answer A or B, or tell you what the weather's like where they are, or where they're watching from. Could be as simple as a commonly used simple one to kind of get started. So I wanted to quick run you through the way I like to structure shows. I've used this with lots of different clients in different niches and with different types of audiences, and overall it works pretty well. Obviously make any sort of tweaks that you think are appropriate. The content will completely change and completely be dependent on what you're talking about. But in terms of a general structure for a show or a nice little template, here's what I like to do. So kind of in the beginning, have that first part where it is a pre-show. If you're at the level where you can add in graphics, adding a little countdown timer or something to kind of show that this is not really the show yet, is a great thing to do. One of the reasons I like to build that in is it gives you 3 to 5 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on how big your audience is. I'd recommend sticking with like 3 to 5 to start with. Probably 3 for your first few. Because you're likely not going to have a lot of people there anyways, it's just going to be good to build in this practice, and you'll start to get some people to show up and really start creating that engagement. And if you have people on your teams or people that you know that can jump in there to help get conversations started, that's always a great thing to do. It's always a great way to kickstart some of that interaction pieces. If you can have some people who are your friends be willing to jump on in there and get that conversation rolling. But start with a pre-show, countdown timer, and ask some sort of basic questions or some sort of question of the day, if you will. Could be as simple as, what's the weather like, or where you're watching from. That's a common one. But if you can tailor it a little bit more to your topic, even better. But something that's only going to be a couple word answer that's easy for people to chime in about, and ask that up front. Try to get some conversation going around it. When you see people responding, you should be engaging with those. You should be calling out the responses. A lot of platforms will allow you to put the comment across the screen. Go ahead and do that. That's another great way to get some more responses and more engagement from people. Your big job here with this pre-show is, one, to make sure you're testing everything, that all your stuff's working, that you are live, that people are seeing you, that the sound is working. This is your time to kind of troubleshoot anything that might be going wrong. But it also serves a valuable purpose in helping just create a little bit of engagement, a little bit of conversation back and forth with your audience, really a little bit of connection time with your audience. Then after that countdown timer runs out, or after a couple minutes, kind of know how long it's going to be in your head, then you jump into your hook and setup. So get into, tease the topic you're going to be talking about for the day, kind of set things up. Mention if this is a regular show with a name, give the name of the show, all that kind of stuff. Say who you are, have your lower third go across, that kind of piece. Set up the content for the day. Then from there, you can jump in and have people do some sort of simple engagement. I like to have them some way that they can quickly just type a one-word answer or something that is going to get them involved. Again, try to get them involved as early as possible. We try to get them involved in the pre-show. We delivered a little bit of content. Now we're going to try to get them involved again, but do something very simple this time. So let's use the question I asked earlier. That could be a great example. Have you gone live before? If we're talking about live streaming as our content piece, that could be my first question after the setup is, have you ever gone live before? Yes or no? Leave it in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to know just where you're at. And really what you're doing here with this simple question is, again, try to increase engagement, but it should also give you an idea of what your audience is like for the topic. If they have any familiarity with that, that's kind of ideal in my mind, but you might not always be able to do that depending on the topic that you're talking about. But either way, have something simple. A classic one that I think is overused, and I would try to steer away from it, but a great example that you see lots of people doing is, do you want to hear more about this topic? Leave a yes in the comments. Would you like to know more? Leave a yes or no in the comments. You're going to tell them anyways, so I always don't really like that as a question, but think of some sort of simple question you can ask them. The next thing from there is you're going to jump into, say, that first piece of content. So let's say we were talking about the 3 best microphones for live streaming. We'd have that simple engagement, and then I jump into a section of content where I talk about microphone number 1, all the advantages, the reason I like it, the disadvantages, the reasons you might not want to use it. You deliver your piece of content for that first section. Then you would pause and do for a little bit of an engagement piece. So I'd have some back and forth, see if people have any questions, if people are making comments about the microphone. I've tried that one, things like that. You'd call it out. You're scrolling through the chat, kind of calling out some of those things, having a little break for engagement here in your content. Do that for maybe a minute or 2, depends on how many comments, how many things you go. You do that, maybe you don't have any comments, then you're able to move on right away. But either way, take some time, build it into your outline, pause for engagement, then jump into content section number 2 and talk about that second microphone. Do that solidly without really looking at the chat or paying attention, then pause and then do another engagement piece, and do that continually through your content piece. The reason you want to do that is because you don't want to be too distracted by the chat or what's going on. You don't want to constantly be looking down, constantly be giving inferior educational content because you're distracted. So you want to make sure that you deliver high-value content while adding in that engagement piece. So that's what a structure like that allows you to do. So you just had your last little bit of, you just delivered your last piece of content. That's when you can then jump to a more broad Q&A kind of time like you normally would for a lot of presentations. If you were in person, a lot of people will have their Q&A time at the end of the presentation. Do your Q&A time, and then at the very end, before you wrap things up, that's when I want you to have a really solid call to action. You could even add in a call to action before your big general Q&A time if you want. But be sure to have in a big call to action at the end. Normally, if you say you're on YouTube, if you're streaming on YouTube, it's sending them to go watch another one of your videos, a previous live stream, or to go interact with your website in some way, or go do something based off of the content. So I always like to have some sort of call to action to end the stream with, and then you close down. I like to have some sort of graphic come up, because usually there's a little bit of delay with the live streaming software. There's usually a little latency kind of built in, say from what you're doing in person to what is happening on YouTube or Facebook. We can talk more about that in a little bit, but there's usually some sort of delay, so add in some sort of graphic at the end, fade to black, but don't cut the stream, and then you give it a little bit of time until you see it on your separate device, or give it a full 20-30 seconds, and then end the stream from that point. And that is the general structure of what I like to see for a live streaming show. I think it works really well. Highly recommend that you use that as kind of your template, your jumping off point, because it has a lot of the different elements in that really increase engagement and deliver great value for your audience. But make it your own, obviously. Find different ways to tweak it, find different things that work well for you, create maybe different segments where you have people call in or whatever it might be. Make it your own, but this should hopefully be a solid jumping off point. Which now that brings us to our final topic for this video, and that's what to do when things go wrong. So this is live video. You'd be foolish if you expected everything to go perfect. It's just not realistic. It's not what's going to happen. There are going to be times when things don't go 100% perfect. You're going to have to adjust. The biggest keys on here is to actually just to be flexible, to be ready to pivot, to be ready to make those adjustments and troubleshoot some things. It's okay. It happens. It's going to happen. That is one of the beauties of live streaming, is that it makes you a little bit more real, because we don't know what's going to happen. There could be mistakes. There could be things. You're more real and raw in live streaming, which is one of the reasons people enjoy it. People feel more of that connection because they're getting to see more of you as a human. They're not seeing this perfectly polished video. So don't get frustrated when those inevitable mistakes and those inevitable tech issues or word fumbles happen. Just go with it. Don't get frustrated. Just keep on going. The other thing is to be sure to practice if you're nervous. If you're scared about jumping on in front of the camera, if you have some hesitations, which makes complete sense, do some practice. Maybe find a group of fellow DMS students that you can go live directly to and just send them the unlisted link, and they can watch you and you can practice together and have some interactions together and get used to what it's like to be live. You can go and have that unlisted live stream and get some practice with your teammates, with, again, fellow students. If you want to be a part of that, let people know in the comments that you'd like to get a little group together to go and practice going live. The other thing, another way to actually get a little bit more practice without going live, is to say in any of your recorded content, is to practice as if it were live. Don't make the cuts. Pretend like you have to just go through, you just have to keep talking, you just have to keep presenting, just have to keep going, no matter what kind of mistakes you make. Just get used to that fact. That's a great way to kind of practice without some more of the real threats of it being in front of your actual audience. The most important thing is to just get started. To think about it, and like I mentioned earlier in the video, is to focus on that 1% improvements. That getting started, wherever you are, with whatever gear you have, that's going to be the biggest thing. Get that first live stream out there, and then look to grow, look to improve in those little increments every single time. Over the long term, those add up to be huge changes, and that's how you get to really have a professional level live stream and be creating just amazing content and really creating and developing a super strong community. So if you want to learn more about live streaming and all the different issues it can have, all the things to consider, be sure to head on over to nickpolkuski.com/checklist. I have a live streaming checklist there that kind of goes over all the things you should be considering before you go live to make sure to help minimize the chances that you're going to have any sort of mistakes or there are going to be issues. We always want to minimize them, but realize that they will happen, and to just keep going.